All right, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning into our second virtual STEAM night. This STEAM night focuses on the technology side of STEAM. So once again, be sure to also follow us on our Twitter and our Instagram account. Tuning into our second virtual STEAM night. This STEAM night focuses on the technology side. All right, sorry about that. So moving on, our upcoming STEAM nights will be, we have one that will be on engineering on Tuesday, May 19th at the same time as this one. We also have our art STEAM night, which will be on Thursday, May 28th, as well as our math STEAM night, which will take place on Tuesday, June 2nd, and that will wrap up the rest of our STEAM nights. So today we have three presenters, and they will just be talking a little bit about their majors, their minors, and some of their experiences within their majors, as well as their experiences just in college in general. So I'll first hand it off to Madeline, who will talk a little bit about her major in linguistics and cognitive science, and she is currently a sophomore at the University of Southern California. Also, after she presents, you can ask any questions that you have in the chat box on the very right, and she will answer any questions that you guys have at the end of her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Madeline, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the University of Southern California. So let me see if I can get my presentation. It says I'm not allowed to start screen sharing while another participant is also sharing. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, my name is Madeline. I'm a sophomore at USC, fight on. And I'm studying linguistics and cognitive science as my major. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about how technology plays a role in my major and my studies, and how I think it plays a role in pretty much any field that you'll go into in the future. So here's just a little picture from me from game day, but I was originally doing a bachelor's of science in neuroscience. And then fall of my sophomore year, I started taking neurobiology. I hated it. I realized that I loved linguistics, so I switched over to the BA. And kind of how technology plays a role in linguistics and cognitive science in a lot of fields is that a lot of places are using AI right now. And understanding how to code and how to use technology to solve problems is just really important in any field because of these new technologies that are evolving. So that also plays a role in geospatial intelligence, which is using satellites, using mapping, using GIS technologies to understand how people are moving around, how, like for example, with the COVID-19 outbreak right now, a lot of places are using GIS technology to track and map who has it in which places and how it's moving around and who's spreading it. And all of that is, it used to be an analyst would look at a map that came in from a satellite. They would look at the picture, they would find all the things in the picture, and then they would send it off as data. But what analysts are starting to do now is that they're developing these AI programs that can analyze the images for them. So kind of taking out that human piece and streamlining data, because there is like so much data that comes in every hour of every day that a person working 9 to 5 just can't get through it all. So technology is really allowing for a lot more data to be processed at one time. Even in choreography, some of my classes, we've looked at technology like projections and designing like graphic design to lay over the top of dances. Or I just did my final for my choreography class was me teaching a bunch of people a dance on Zoom and then laying it out on my computer so that it looked like we were all dancing together. So yeah, I really just can't emphasize enough how much tech plays a role in kind of like all fields now. And if you have any questions about specific fields, I don't know how much I can speak to them, but I can try. Another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up was this idea of learning information versus learning skill sets. And I think that depending on what you're going into, you're either going to learn information about technology or you're going to learn a skill set of how to deal with it. So for an example, an information one would be taking a CS class, a computer science class, so that you learn how to code, or taking an engineering class that you learn how to actually build and develop these technologies. On the other side of that is everything else: international relations, linguistics, political science, humanities. Any of these are going to teach you the skill sets of identifying patterns, of tracking data, of making judgments that you have to use whenever you're using technology. So, yeah, kind of thinking about how those can play a role in different ways. And then finally, outside of class, just a little bit more about me. I do research at the USC Language Processing Lab, where basically we take psychology and we take linguistics and we put them together and look at how people process and understand different words. I'm also on the executive board for Alpha Omega Epsilon, which is a sorority for women who are in engineering. We have a lot of biomedical engineers, a lot of computer scientists, a lot of biochem, a lot of different majors. I also do work for the Intelligence Community Center for Academic Excellence, which is, involved with places like the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, Joint Education Project, which goes out and helps local elementary schools with after-school projects, and the USA Chamber Ballet Company. So yeah, if there's any questions for me, that's just a little bit about myself.
Awesome, thank you so much. So it doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but if you guys still have questions, you can just type them into the live chat and she can answer them at the end of the next presentation, but we're just gonna move forward. Okay, actually, we do have a question that just popped up, which is how will you specifically use your geospatial minor to work with linguistics?
Okay, so kind of the path that I'm looking for is more into the geospatial intelligence side of things. I'm hoping to get my master's in that. But if I were to combine them, you can do some really interesting research in how languages have actually moved globally throughout history. So, seeing how Latin broke off into a bunch of different languages and moved around, or how different populations are learning different languages, trying to help these languages that are dying out to, kind of move around to different populations. So that would just be a few examples.
All right, great. It doesn't look like we have any more questions yet. So we will move forward, and our next presenter is Hezekiah. So he will present his presentation now.
Awesome. Let me share my screen. Cool. Okay. Can you all hear me? Good. Okay. So my name is Hezekiah Branch. I'm a junior at Tufts University from Columbia, South Carolina. And then before that from Boston. Studied cognitive brain science, which is a pretty broad and interdisciplinary major built on comp sci, philosophy and psychology, and then minor in computer science and engineering management. And the process I got to getting to my major is pretty interesting, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, it definitely took a couple different paths before getting to my current field of study. I currently work for a financial company called Prudential. I'm doing project management, and then I was previously on the data science team last year. And my passions are mainly in machine learning, so I have a research background in machine learning, as well as Brazilian Portuguese, former Portuguese minor, and then Africana studies is where a lot of my work goes into. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of what research looks like in college. So because of my major is in cognitive science, a lot of my research opportunities have been in cognitive science. But before that, I also had opportunities even doing like mechanical engineering, doing really cool things with Twitter data and kind of doing independent studies on that part, which I think is a benefit of just being in an academic space with a lot of really awesome people is that you can really do research in whatever you're interested in. I think a lot of times people think of like medicine or they think of engineering as research, but as long as you have a field and funding, hopefully, you can really break into whatever interests you. So even like my first exposure to research in college was um, with our child studies and human development class. So there's this really cool company called WGBH here in Boston, and they create a lot of cool shows like Arthur and Molly of Denali and all that cool stuff. So my first class as a freshman was getting to work with the producers of those shows and getting to visit, the places and see how Arthur, which is like a big project at Tufts, can be used to teach kids civic engagement, which I would have never even thought was a thing before coming to college. And just seeing like how you can really dabble in anything that you have a passion in is pretty cool. After that, I worked at the first Fab Lab, which is like a makerspace type setup. The first Fab Lab outside of MIT, which is here in South End. I'm working with some of the creators of Scratch programming language. So that's a programming language created by MIT. You can do like drag and drop programming. And we built a lot of cool stuff. Like we replicated the shark from Jaws, which was very fun. I did a workshop at Boston Children's Museum. And it was a really dope place because I didn't at that time have a mechanical engineering background. So that was really fun. During my junior year, I did research in artificial intelligence and working with natural language processing. So one really cool thing about the human brain is that, at least from the part of science that my classes come from, is that we kind of think of the mind as being one brain with two systems, and in a lot of that you do a lot of processing and a lot of prediction that doesn't really come to surface maybe in like your everyday conversation. But even as you're like watching this YouTube and you're listening to me talk, your mind is already kind of thinking of how my sentence is gonna finish. And so that back and forth is what we call turn-based dialogue. So I worked in a lab that called the Human Interaction Lab, which we called the High Lab. And we did a lot of research on just like, what is turn-based dialogue? How does the mind use prediction and the different cognitive mechanisms behind that? And that was a really dope experience. And then most recently, working on machine learning for sustainability, looking at how different principles of machine learning can be used to create more equitable measures for marginalized communities. So yeah, onto my next slide. Here's some really cool things I got to do in college. So I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but in the left-hand side, I got to visit Twitter and go through their first flight program, which is about 7 to 10 students come and you get to do like final round interviews with Twitter, get to meet the staff, do a lot of networking and connections, which is dope. Here in the middle, went to New York City and got to see the set of Live with Ryan and Kelly, which is really cool. I think when I was a kid, it was Live with Regis and Kelly, but I think it's now Ryan and Kelly. And then on the top right is Prudential in Newark. So that was dope. And then I used to be a Jopwell ambassador, so just basically recruiting students of color into talent, creating workshops, doing on-campus events, trying to level the playing field for everybody. That's something that is really important to me. And even my current job working at Prudential and working as a PM intern was through Jopwell. So that was definitely a dope experience. And then on the bottom right is this hackathon that I got to go to that I was invited to from the NCAA with MIT. Met some really awesome people there. And definitely if you're interested in comp sci or interested in tech, or, just have a chance to go to one. Try to, see if you can go to a hackathon, once in your life. It's a lot of stress, but it's also a lot of fun. And some of them do also open up to high schoolers too. So I would definitely recommend that. And so this slide, here are just a few of my really favorite classes. So on the left, I already kind of spoke about this earlier, but creating children's media, definitely one of my top favorite classes in college. I got to build a really cool app teaching Portuguese for that class, so that was dope. Data science for sustainability, basically like machine learning meets mechanical engineering meets social injustice. So figuring out, how to approach different disparities and different social injustices using computational approaches. My second class from comp sci was software engineering. So what goes into building really good software? How do you make software that's complex and not complicated? What are industry standards? What are design patterns? What are ways to do really good testing, black box testing, white box testing, partitioning, all really kind of done stuff, but like the more you study it, the more it makes sense. Web engineering, which I feel like is really like just a useful skill for anybody to learn. And I think it's definitely the class that a lot of students have mentioned being one of the most relevant classes that they find after graduation, just being able to build mobile apps and going through that design process. And then, my freshman class, I took this freshman year when I was still trying to do biomedical engineering, which did not last long, but civil engineering and startups. So we had to actually build a startup in the duration of a semester. And our success at doing that was connected to our grade. So like whoever had the best startup got the A, whoever was next had the B and C and so on. A very stressful class. We had to do interviews out of state, which was not fun. But it definitely taught a lot about just what, goes into the process of creating lean startups and kind of how you can bring a lot of different fields into one place. And that was definitely a class that I feel like motivated me to minor in engineering management. And so like on that note, I think even, I mentioned earlier, like my major changed a lot too in college. So like I first came into Tufts biomedical engineering. It's like, nah, I don't really like that. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna switch to computer science. And then I was computer science and cognitive science with a minor in Portuguese. And then up to last semester, was doing that. And then I decided, okay, I wanna do cognitive brain science and also do this engineering management minor and still keep the comp sci. So because of that, I ended up doing comp sci minor, engineering management minor, and then my current major. And yeah, that's pretty much my process. If y'all have questions, feel free to send them in the chat and I'll try to do my best at answering your questions.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. It looks like we do have one question right now. It's, do you plan to continue to work with children or how will you use your concentrations?
That's a good question. I think interestingly enough, like that passion, even though it's not my major, it's still something that I'm very much so active in, just like working with kids, mentoring youth. Even like during my whole major, I was still a coordinator for our university's Peace Games organization, which is where we teach socio-emotional learning to kids in the area. And that was definitely something that I was like, I definitely see myself teaching in the future. I think preferably I would like to teach, maybe high school or college. Like I did internships previously where like I taught kindergarten for 8 months and then taught middle school. And I think the group that I loved teaching the most was high school, specifically high school foreign language and math. So despite, well, even though I'm still doing tech and, probably gonna do that full time, I think in some capacity, I'll find a way to still, even like teach code to kids and create that mentorship that allowed me to get to where I am today.
Awesome, thank you so much. Another question popped up and it's, what kind of future jobs can come from your major?
That's a good question. I think a lot of the graduates from my major end up going to research positions. like most common software engineering, or they'll do like research in academia, or go into like a PhD in cognitive science. For me, I'm on a rotational program at Prudential, so most likely still doing product management after graduation, but definitely research is a huge passion of mine too. And I've also been looking at graduate school opportunities, which for my major really would push for an interest in research, or at least demonstrating a capacity to do research. So yeah, that's probably where I'll go. I think right now I'm working on a project that looks at Twitter data and looking at how, you can use different computational approaches to track trends on Twitter, just looking at different user personas, which I think will be a really fun project and a lot of work, but something I'm looking forward to. And for students who are more interested in like psychiatry, or you're more interested in maybe like the biological aspects of the mind, I recommend looking into programs in clinical psychology, which is a little bit different from mine. Clinical psychology focuses like less on the tech and AI and kind of like the CS side of things, and more so looks at just like the biological mechanisms of the mind, and more of like clinical research studies that you would see, like CNN or the NIH. Yeah. Any other questions?
All right, it looks like that's it. We did get one more question, but that is for any presenter, so we will just address that question at the end. So we will move on to Kevin, who will be presenting on his major, computer science.
All right. Let me share my screen here. Oh, sorry, I just gotta do the security and privacy thing for Zoom. All right. You can see okay? Okay, so my presentation is about what is computer science, and I'm going to be focusing mostly on just one big foundational concept and mindset that future prospective computer science students will kind of need to ingrain in themselves before like considering or going to this major. So a little bit about me. I am a senior at the University of Michigan, studying computer science. In terms of clubs, I'm mostly involved in this group called the Michigan Engineering Consulting Group, where we go out to any company in Michigan and do consulting work for them. And the kind of catch is they're focused on engineering students. So they do any kind of like computer science or engineering specialty work to help companies around Michigan. I worked at a couple large tech companies, including Amazon, where I've worked in tax infrastructure, Facebook, where I've worked in video text detection and analysis in their research division. At Correlation One is a startup in New York. Work with them on building a new client project to grade new trading projects for their clients. And then Jump Trading is a trading firm where I worked on some of their trading infrastructure. And then in August 2020, I'll be working at Control Labs on virtual reality technology. So the fundamental concept I want to get at in terms of computer science is that computer science is really a problem-solving discipline. It's essentially taking any idea. So if you have any idea for like an app or an idea to do just about anything online or on your phone or just out in the real life, that idea, in order to make it real, you have to turn it into bits and pieces like a puzzle, and then slowly piece it together one by one until you get to the end. So it's really hard to kind of conceptualize what it means by like blasting some kind of idea into large pieces and putting them together. So here's some examples of some kind of these ideas and then putting them all together. So this is a project I worked on last year. We call it a visually induced music platform. And on the left here, you can kind of see these are these Snapchat spectacles, and then these Bose AR glasses, which can essentially like shoot music into your ears. And if you imagine, what if you put these two together, you had these cameras on your glasses and you have these speakers. And if you look at some image, like an album cover, can you have that image be playing in your speakers automatically as if your glasses was seeing for you? So we wanted to investigate that. In terms of making it into like the puzzle and turning into problem solving, you kind of start with over here on the top, you have your image that you want to get at, and then how can you put it through all this black box magic here and have it display some kind of sound. So we put a Raspberry Pi on there. We found some algorithm online to analyze an image using some Spotify APIs, and then eventually adding some code and setting up a server. Then we ended up with this final prototype that would be able to display all the sound. And this project would be an example of something that like a couple students working at school could accomplish. The next example is one large issue at a company like Facebook, where they have all this content online. For example, here's like a meme. Memes can come in many different languages. And here the issue was they wanted to get this image-based format and they want to get all the text out of it. So in this example, a team of about 20 to 50 engineers, they tackled this problem of how when you get an input image and then there's all this deep learning black box magic that you generally learn after going through not only like a college degree in computer science, but also a master's and PhD degree to learn all of the basics of deep learning, and which I won't get into today. But the end result is that they can grab all of these white, essentially these are white blobs with black backgrounds, and they can get all this and then get the text and have this readable text that they can now just use. And now Facebook has like millions of images with text on it. And if they can be able to get like every single bit of text on it, then they can accomplish like really huge things. Like, for example, if there's hate speech on any image, then they can detect it, take it down, or they can grab the image text and feed it to their advertiser so that they can make more money, for example. So this would be an example of a mid-sized project or one small project at a large organization like Facebook. And finally, as an example of something that's large, you all might be familiar with Uber, the ride-sharing app. And what goes behind it is hundreds of engineers are all together to create one app. And I won't go into any of this complicated stuff, but it's essentially all of this work can't be accomplished by just one person. It's a collective effort to accomplish this kind of puzzle where each tidbit is a piece of this huge puzzle that is Uber, and they're putting all together. Maybe there's like 20 people working on this one part or another 50 people working on this other part, but they're all kind of like finding their own puzzle pieces and putting them together. And in the end, then they have this kind of end result here where you call something on your app and then the cab driver comes to you and picks you up. So the second part of this presentation, I wanted to get into just in my mind, what is a really good way to get into it. And at the start, step one should definitely be just thinking of like a fun idea, something simple, whatever is passionate to you, which is most important. As an example, here is a picture of chicken tenders, and a team of students, they just for fun, they decided that they would make an app to find which Michigan dining hall had chicken tenders that day, because they were clearly the best meal for dinner that day. So they just whipped up the really quick website, and then they were able to create this project, put up a website, and show which dining hall was going to have chicken tenders that day. And using this puzzle analogy again, you kind of take it step by step, like a puzzle. So you're, for example, if you need more coding skills, then take more coding tutorials so you can be able to write the code necessary to, for example, like build a website. And then when you hit something wrong, then ask questions online. So go to these like great resources online like Stack Overflow, Quora, Reddit, and you can ask like small questions like, what should I do for this small puzzle like coding problem, or maybe overarching ideas like what is the next step like architectural wise that I want to do for this next project. So there's a lot of really great resources, and if these applications weren't there, then a lot of work across like every technology firm would be a lot slower. And then you just keep doing it. You keep pumping out projects, new fun projects, and then by the time like you're at the end of college, then you have a bunch of projects under your belt, and you'll be able to be a really well-functioning software engineer. And so that's it for my presentation. Any questions?
Awesome, thank you so much. So it looks like we have a couple just general questions. The first one being, how can someone creating an English library in another country using technology beyond MP4 to help promote literacy?
What was the question again?
Yeah, okay. How can someone creating an English library in another country using technology beyond MP4 to help promote literacy?
If I'm understanding right, if they have like an English library, I'm not sure what exactly that means, but maybe treat it as like a literal library, like books, and then helping to promote the whole idea of literacy. Well, there's, off the top of my head, you could do stuff like scanning the books and providing all this online content online, and maybe doing audio readings of it so that they can get translated, and then people across the world can be able to read those books. There's a lot of technology out there. If you just look it up, you can see if you had like all these resources, and there's a lot of people, especially in this current crisis, that'll be willing to help and bring things across the world into another and boost knowledge. For example, just like this literacy initiative, for example.
Awesome. The next question is, did you think about the future jobs when deciding your majors?
I definitely did. I feel like even my first initial major was kind of like, okay, like I want to do a major that I'm interested in, but I also want to get paid for going to school. Especially like the school I'm at, I think we're already at like 74,000 a year for cost of attendance. So like it would be really sad for me to go through that and then not make money. Especially even just coming from like an FGLI background, like first general income background, and then figuring out, okay, like I'm not only thinking about myself, but thinking about just like my family and their expectations and responsibilities. So I think that was definitely something that was on my mind. I think when it came to actually choosing a major that I like really wanted to do, it was really down to passion. And I was like, okay, if I'm choosing a major, like thankfully I am in a major that does make a decent amount of money if you go into tech. But if I do choose a major that doesn't pay well, but it's definitely like my top interest, how can I market the skills that I do have to a position that allows me to do what I love while still getting paid, which I think isn't really talked about as much. Like when you say, even like I think all of the majors that you've heard from this call are very broad, like computer science is broad, cognitive science is broad. So within that, you can specialize or you can create something that doesn't really exist. You just have to be able to sell, you know, your skills, sell your projects, sell your capabilities, and sell your interests to whatever company that you're looking for. because even in software engineering, there are people with English majors. Even in tech, there are people from political science, from non-technical backgrounds that find a way to market their skills in a way that allows them to still contribute to a technical team.
Yeah, I would kind of say that there seems to be kind of two pathways that people can take, and I think that I've taken both at some point. So you can either say, this is the job I want, and this is the major that's going to help get me there. And that's what I said when I entered school. I was like, I want to be a neuroscience researcher, so I'm going to do neuroscience. And then when I switched, it kind of flipped to the opposite thing that people can do, which is saying, okay, I love this major. I love the courses. I love the content. What can I do with this once I graduate? And I think that both are really valuable and both can be really helpful. I think that everyone kind of falls somewhere in the middle of those two. But really, unless you're doing something, and this is my perspective, but unless you're doing something like mechanical engineering, computer science, a BFA or something where you're really learning skills that you need in order to go into a field, a lot of things like English, linguistics, political science, international relations, again, you're learning these skill sets, not necessarily content. Like you're also learning content, but the most important thing are the skills that you can then go on and do, hundreds of different jobs in a bunch of different fields. So your major is definitely not limiting to what job you can take, but it can help you get there.
I also wanted to push, since I'm assuming like most of the people watching this are looking at bachelor's programs, like you getting a degree or a bachelor's degree was not going to make you an expert in the field that you are studying, but it will give you, as was mentioned, the tools you need to succeed. But at the end of the day, the best way to go toward the path you're doing is experience. Like nothing is going to really match the experience. Like no amount of classroom or textbook or theory is going to match the learning you get like in the field on the job. And a lot of people would graduate from college not even using the degrees that they studied in. So really, I would just urge y'all to just go for what you are passionate in. Like go for what you want, and don't let people limit you. Like if you find something that you love, you find something you want to do, and if that happens to be tech, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of high schoolers, they have this issue of not knowing what they want to do or not knowing what their actual passion is. And if you are a high schooler in that issue, in that predicament, then there's not really like a specific point. Like when you're under college, you got to choose this major. Every college, I'm sure, has opportunities where you can switch a major, and you're encouraged to go find a major, try it out for a little bit, and if you don't like it, then switch to a new one, and you have plenty of time. So there's not really like a race here in terms of college.
All right. My bad. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? All right, awesome. So it doesn't look like anybody else has any other questions. If you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to let us know in the live chat. But do you guys have any last words that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I would just encourage everybody watching to keep learning, to keep failing, to keep learning from your failures, and allow yourself to celebrate the victories that you do get. Don't just keep working and working and working, and just take the time to appreciate where you're going and where you have come. And I think that's the biggest advice I can give to anybody trying to pursue a future and the things that they love.
Awesome. It looks like we just got another question. So, and I think any of you guys can answer this. In general, do you have to apply to a certain school of a university?
Well,
I think it's dependent on the university. I think like Berkeley or some other schools, they require you to apply for it. I think mostly because there's programs are so big that they're having a GPA requirement on them. Some, like, I wouldn't say small, but like at least at Michigan, you don't really need to apply for it. But it's really dependent on the school, and maybe that'll also influence your decision in trying to get into a school.
Yeah, I can speak to pretty much just to USC on this, but I'm sure it's the same at a lot of similar schools that are like private and larger, is that to get into my college is Dornsife, which is just, the liberal arts and social sciences. And that's just open. Anyone can do it once you get into the school. But the specialty majors, like the engineering school, the architecture school, the dance school, like those are all you have to do an extra step. So once you're in USC or another school, it might be easy to switch around within your college. But sometimes in order to move to a separate college within your university, that takes an extra application step and is not guaranteed.
At least for where I'm at for Tufts, we do have a low wall policy. So you can like switch between School of Engineering, School of Arts and Sciences, School of the Museum of Fine Arts. You just have to like fill out a form, which I think is pretty nice compared to some schools where like switching majors, like reapplying to college all over again. I think if you're applying to college, the best resource would be to look at the university's admissions page and see what their policy is on for applicants, because some schools, like the major you apply to does affect your admission to the school. And for some schools applying to engineering, if a school has like a 6% acceptance rate for engineers, that's going to be different than maybe applying to like history or biology. And if you don't find that information, I would just call up their admissions office and see if an admissions counselor can provide more advice.
Great. And a follow-up to that is, can you just apply to the university not knowing what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, people apply undeclared. I'm not even people who are like juniors and still technically undeclared at different schools. Sometimes it benefits because it gives you time to like explore and think about what you want to do. Like I think people have an idea of what they want to study in college and kind of stick to that. But I don't think applying undeclared really hurts you unless you're applying to a specific like scholarship that would require you to have a certain major. Or you're applying to a certain, I don't know, like a specific program at a university. Like if you're applying to Howard's pre-med program, then like you would have to be on the pre-med track. I think most universities allow you to apply undeclared.
I would kind of add to that saying that most universities will allow you to apply undeclared, but look carefully at how undeclared students, like, because some colleges can get weird with that. Like, I know that the University of Washington, if you are undeclared when you apply, like they have these pre-tracks, like you can be pre-engineering or pre-science, but if you're actually undeclared, then you don't, like you get housed with like a random major instead of like being with other people in your major. You get like really bad choices of what GEs you can take. And then also at USC, I believe that if you're undeclared, you get a later registration time than people that actually are in a major. So look carefully at your school's policies because it could be, better to be undeclared because then you don't have to deal with switching majors, or it could actually hurt you to be undeclared. So yeah, I would like call them or look for info on their website to ask about that. But as far as like graduating and getting your classes in, being undeclared or not knowing what you want to do for your first year is absolutely no problem.
Awesome. And it looks like we got another question from Madeline, which is, what can you do in geospatial with other social science majors?
Okay, so I didn't know this until I actually joined the minor, but pretty much every single field on the planet uses GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. So, okay, so let's see here. If you were doing international relations, that's an easy one because, you can look at how different countries are moving their military units around. Or you could look at warfare zones and saying, okay, these people are here and these people are here, and here's where we need to strategically position people. In something like, linguistics, we're looking at how languages move around. And something like maybe English, you could look at how different dialects have moved around. Any single field has things in places, and that's all that geospatial is looking at where things are in what places and then how they move.
All right, it looks like that is all the questions that we have right now. But thank you guys all for watching this STEAM night, and we again are planning to have, we don't have one next week, but we do have one the week after that on Tuesday, and then we have one on May 28th and June 2nd. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to present tonight, and thank you to everyone who's watching and who asked questions and engaged with tonight's STEAM night. But thank you all and have a great night.